The fog rolled in thick over Greyhaven, Maine, cloaking the coastal town in a damp gray shroud. Ellie Harper pulled her sweater tighter, staring out the kitchen window of her rented cottage. The cliffs beyond dropped sharply into the Atlantic, their edges barely visible through the mist. It was her first winter here, a far cry from the buzzing chaos of Boston, where she'd spent years grinding as a graphic designer. She'd moved for quiet, for space to breathe. But tonight, the silence felt heavier than usual, like the air itself was holding its breath. Inside, her nephew Miles sprawled on the living room rug, his tablet glowing as he battled aliens in some sci-fi game. At 10, he was all energy and questions, staying with Ellie while his parents worked overseas. "Aunt Ellie, can we get food?" he called, not looking up. "I'm starving." Ellie glanced at the clock. 8:47 p.m. Too late to cook, and the fridge was a sad collection of ketchup packets and wilted lettuce. "All right, kiddo. Diner takeout it is." She grabbed her phone, pulling up the menu for Greyhaven's only diner, the Salty Anchor. It was a greasy spoon with a loyal following, the kind of place where locals swapped stories over burnt coffee. She ordered their usual, cheeseburgers, fries, and a chocolate shake for Miles, through the diner's clunky app. 25 minutes, she said, ruffling Miles's hair. "Think you can survive that long?" He grinned, dodging her hand. "Barely. Can I pick the movie tonight?" "As long as it's not that alien invasion one again," she teased, settling onto the couch. The cottage was small but cozy, with creaky wooden floors and a stone fireplace that smelled faintly of salt and smoke. The walls were adorned with faded nautical paintings, leftovers from the previous tenant. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows. Ellie shivered, pulling a blanket over her lap. Something about Greyhaven's winters made her feel exposed, like the ocean and the forest beyond were watching. The minutes ticked by, filled with Miles's game sound effects and the occasional gust against the cottage. Ellie scrolled through her emails, half-heartedly tweaking a logo design for a client. Then the doorbell chimed, a sharp, jarring sound that cut through the quiet. Miles paused his game, looking up. That was fast. Too fast, Ellie muttered, checking her phone. Only 15 minutes had passed. She stood, smoothing her jeans, and headed to the door, peering through the peephole. A man stood on the porch, holding a paper takeout bag, his face half hidden by a baseball cap. The porch light cast harsh shadows, making his features hard to discern. She opened the door a crack, the cold air rushing in. "Evening," the man said, his voice low but polite. "Got your order from the Salty Anchor." He held up the bag, the diner's logo printed in faded red ink. He was younger than Ellie expected, maybe mid-20s, with a lean build and a worn jacket that looked too thin for the weather. His cap was pulled low, obscuring his eyes, but a faint smile played on his lips. "Thanks," Ellie said, taking the bag. The paper crinkled under her fingers, damp from the fog. She handed him a 20 and a few ones, expecting him to leave, but he lingered, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "Everything okay?" she asked, her grip tightening on the door. "Yeah, just..." He hesitated, glancing past her into the cottage. "Mind if I ask you something? You and Miles live here alone?" Ellie froze. Her heart gave a sharp thud. She hadn't mentioned Miles's name, and the order was under her name, not his. "How do you know his name?" she asked, her voice sharper than intended. The man's smile faltered, but only for a second. "Saw it on the order," he said smoothly, tapping his phone. "App shows the whole household sometimes. Sorry if I spooked you." Ellie's stomach twisted. The app didn't show that kind of detail. She'd used it enough to know. She forced a smile, stepping back. No worries, thanks for the delivery. She started to close the door, but his hand shot out, catching it gently. Real quick, he said, his tone still polite, but with an edge that made her skin prickle. You ever hear stories about this place? Old ones? About the cliffs? His eyes flicked toward the darkness beyond the porch, where the fog swallowed the landscape. Not really, Ellie said, her voice tight. We're new here. She pushed the door, trying to close it without seeming rude, but his hand held firm. You should ask around, he said, his smile returning, wider this time. Greyhaven's got secrets, especially out there. He nodded toward the cliffs, then released the door and stepped back. Enjoy your food, Ellie. She shut the door fast, locking it with a click that echoed in the quiet. Her hands shook as she set the bag on the counter. Miles wandered over, sniffing the air. Smells good. Can I have my shake? Yeah, in a sec, Ellie said, distracted. She opened the bag, pulling out the burgers and fries. Something caught her eye. A small, jagged symbol scratched into the bottom of the bag, like someone had carved it with a knife. It was a circle with a slash through it, rough and uneven, like a warning. Her breath caught. She hadn't seen it when she took the bag from the man. Aunt Ellie, Miles said, tugging her sleeve. You okay? You look weird. I'm fine, she lied, folding the bag to hide the symbol. She handed Miles his shake, forcing a smile. Let's eat and watch that movie. They settled on the couch, the TV flickering to life with some animated adventure Miles loved, but Ellie couldn't focus. Her eyes kept drifting to the windows, where the fog pressed against the glass like a living thing. The man's words echoed in her mind. Greyhaven's got secrets. She tried to shake it off, telling herself he was just a creepy delivery guy, probably bored and messing with her. But the symbol nagged at her, and the way he'd said Miles's name, like he knew more than he should, felt like a splinter under her skin. She double-checked the locks before sitting back down, her burger untouched. An hour later, as Miles dozed against her shoulder, Ellie heard it. A faint rhythmic tapping, like fingers against stone. It was coming from outside near the cliffs. She froze, her heart pounding, and glanced at the window. The fog was too thick to see anything, but the sound grew louder, more deliberate, like someone or something was trying to get her attention. What's out there? She thought, her pulse racing. And why did it feel like the delivery man wasn't gone at all? The tapping faded as quickly as it had started, leaving Ellie Harper staring out the cottage window into the impenetrable fog. Her heart still thumped in her chest, each beat a reminder of the strange delivery man and that unsettling symbol scratched into the takeout bag. The living room was quiet now, save for the soft hum of the TV and Miles's gentle snoring beside her. The animated movie played on, its bright colors jarring against the unease settling over her like a second skin. She glanced at her nephew, his face peaceful in sleep, and decided not to wake him. Whatever that sound was, probably just a loose branch or the wind, she didn't want to scare him over nothing. Ellie stood, careful not to jostle Miles, and crept to the window. The fog was thicker now, a swirling gray wall that seemed to pulse against the glass. She squinted, trying to make out the cliffs beyond. But there was nothing, just an endless void. The memory of the delivery man's words crept back. Greyhaven's got secrets, especially out there. She shook her head, trying to dislodge the thought. He was just a weirdo, she told herself, Some guy trying to spook the new girl in town. But the symbol on the bag, that jagged circle with a slash through it, felt like more than a prank. It felt like a message. She grabbed the crumpled takeout bag from the counter, smoothing it out under the kitchen light. The symbol was still there, etched into the paper with enough force to tear it in places. It wasn't random. It was deliberate, almost ritualistic. Ellie's fingers traced the lines, her skin prickling. She'd seen something like it before, maybe in a book or a documentary, but she couldn't place it. Her phone buzzed on the counter, startling her. A text from her client asking for a logo tweak by morning. Work. Normalcy. She clung to it, shoving the bag into a drawer and locking it away, both literally and mentally. The next morning, the fog had lifted slightly, leaving Greyhaven draped in a damp gray haze. Miles was up early, already glued to his tablet, researching something with the intensity of a detective. Aunt Ellie, did you know this town has a lighthouse that's been abandoned for, 50 years? He said, not looking up. People say it's haunted. Ellie poured coffee, forcing a laugh. You've been reading too many ghost stories, kid. But her mind flicked back to the delivery man's cryptic warning. She needed answers, or at least someone to tell her she was overreacting. I'm going to see Mrs. Tate next door. Want to come? Miles shook his head, engrossed in his screen. I'm good. I'm looking up that weird symbol from the bag. Ellie froze, coffee mug halfway to her lips. You saw that? Yeah, when you were staring at it last night. I took a picture. He held up his tablet, showing a slightly blurry image of the symbol. I'm gonna search for it online. Maybe it's like a secret code or something. Don't get carried away, Ellie said, trying to keep her voice light. It's probably just some jerk's idea of a joke. But her stomach churned. Miles was too curious for his own good, and she didn't want him digging into something that might be dangerous. Stay inside, okay? I'll be back in 20. Mrs. Nora Tate lived in a weathered bungalow a short walk down the cliffside path. Her yard was a tangle of wildflowers and driftwood sculptures, giving it a quirky charm that stood out in Greyhaven's somber landscape. Ellie knocked, the sound sharp in the morning stillness. The door creaked open almost immediately, revealing Nora, a wiry woman in her late 60s with sharp blue eyes and a knit shawl draped over her shoulders. Ellie Harper, Nora said, her voice warm but tinged with curiosity. Didn't expect you so early. Trouble sleeping? Something like that, Ellie said, stepping inside. The bungalow smelled of lavender and old books, its walls lined with shelves of weathered tomes and nautical trinkets. I had a weird night. I was hoping you could tell me about, anything strange around here. Nora's eyes narrowed slightly, but she gestured to a worn armchair. Sit. Tea? Ellie nodded, and Nora busied herself with a kettle, her movements slow but deliberate. Greyhaven's a quiet place, she began, but quiet doesn't mean empty. What kind of strange are we talking about? Ellie hesitated, then recounted the delivery. The man's odd behavior, knowing Miles's name, the symbol on the bag. She left out the tapping. She wasn't ready to sound that paranoid. Nora listened, her face unreadable, stirring her tea with a steady hand. When Ellie finished, Nora set her cup down with a soft clink. That symbol, Nora said, her voice low. Describe it again. A circle with a slash through it, kind of jagged, like someone carved it. Nora's expression darkened, her fingers tightening around her cup. You don't want to mess with that. It's old, older than this town. Folks around here call it the Watcher's Mark. Ellie's mouth went dry. The Watcher? Nora leaned forward, her voice dropping to a near whisper. It's a story we don't tell outsiders, but you're here now, so you ought to know. Decades ago, people in Greyhaven started vanishing. Fishermen, kids, even whole families. Always in winter, when the fog rolls in thick. They'd find their boats empty, their houses untouched, but no trace of them. Locals blamed the forest, said something lived out there, watching, waiting. They called it the Watcher. And that mark? It showed up before every disappearance, carved into trees, scratched on doors. Ellie's heart sank. You're saying this is real? Not just some ghost story? I'm saying I've lived here 62 years and I've seen things I can't explain. Nora's eyes flicked to the window, where the forest loomed in the distance. My brother went missing in '78. Left his car running on the cliff road, engine still warm. We found that mark on his dashboard. Ellie swallowed hard, the weight of Nora's words pressing against her chest. Why would it show up now? On my takeout bag? Nora shook her head. Could be a warning. Could be a call. Either way, you and that boy need to be careful. Stay away from the cliffs at night and don't let strangers in. Ellie nodded, her mind racing. She thanked Nora and stepped back into the chilly morning, the fog curling around her like fingers. The path back to the cottage felt longer, the air heavier. She couldn't shake the image of that symbol or the delivery man's knowing smile. Was he part of this, or just a creepy messenger? And why Miles' name? When she got home, Miles was still on his tablet, his face pale. Aunt Ellie, he said, his voice small. I found something. He turned the screen toward her, showing a grainy screenshot from an obscure online forum. It was a thread titled Greyhaven Mysteries, and at the top was a photo of the same symbol, posted by someone called Lost Light. The caption read, "Found this carved near the old lighthouse. Last seen with my sister before she vanished. Anyone know what it means?" Ellie's breath caught. The post was dated 3 years ago, and the user hadn't posted since. She scrolled down, finding more comments. People claiming to have seen the symbol, linking it to missing friends, strange noises, shadows in the fog. One user wrote, "It's not a person. It's something else. It knows your name." Aunt Ellie. Miles's voice trembled. Is this bad? She forced a smile, ruffling his hair. It's just people making stuff up online. Don't worry. But her heart pounded. She locked the tablet screen and set it aside, telling Miles to get ready for lunch. As he scampered off, Ellie glanced out the window. The fog had thickened again, and for a split second, she thought she saw a shadow move, a tall, lean figure standing just beyond the glass, watching her. She blinked, and it was gone. But the chill in her bones stayed, and the question lingered. Who or what was watching them now? The fog clung to Greyhaven like a shroud, muffling the world outside Ellie Harper's cottage. She hadn't slept well, her dreams fractured by images of that jagged symbol, a circle slashed through with a cruel, uneven line, and the delivery man's unsettling smile. The shadow she'd glimpsed outside the window last night lingered in her mind, a fleeting shape that felt more real with each passing hour. She'd checked the locks twice before bed, her fingers trembling as she secured the deadbolt. But the cottage no longer felt like a sanctuary. It was too exposed, perched on the cliffs, where the forest and ocean seemed to conspire in the dark. Morning brought no relief. Miles was quieter than usual, picking at his cereal while scrolling through his tablet, still obsessed with the online forum post about the Watcher's mark. Ellie had confiscated the device after breakfast, insisting he focus on something normal, like building a model rocket kit she'd bought to distract him. But her own thoughts kept drifting to Nora Tate's warning. Stay away from the cliffs at night, and don't let strangers in. The words felt like a weight, pressing harder with every creak of the cottage's old bones. By evening, the fog had thickened again, curling around the windows like smoke. Ellie was trying to focus on a client's logo design, her laptop screen casting a pale glow across the kitchen table. When the doorbell rang, the sound was sharp, cutting through the quiet like a blade. Miles looked up from his rocket, his eyes wide. "Another delivery?" he asked, his voice tinged with unease. Ellie frowned, checking her phone. "I didn't order anything." Her pulse quickened as she stood, the memory of last night's delivery man flashing through her mind. She approached the door cautiously, peering through the peephole. There he was again, the same lean figure, baseball cap pulled low, holding another paper bag from the salty anchor. The porch light flickered, casting his face in and out of shadow. But she could see that same faint smile, too knowing, too sharp. She hesitated, her hand hovering over the lock. Every instinct screamed at her to ignore him, to let him leave. But the bag in his hands nagged at her. What if it was a mistake? What if someone else had ordered it? She cracked the door open, keeping the chain on. "I didn't order anything," she said, her voice firm despite the tremor in her chest. The man tilted his head, his smile widening. "Must be a mix-up," he said, his tone smooth, almost rehearsed. "But it's paid for. Cheeseburgers and a shake, right? For you and Miles." His eyes flicked past her into the cottage, and Ellie's stomach dropped. He'd done it again. Used Miles's name without explanation. "How do you know his name?" she demanded, gripping the door tighter. "You said it was on the order last time, but I didn't order this." He shrugged, unfazed. "Small town, word gets around." He held the bag closer, the paper crinkling in his grip. "Look, I just deliver what they tell me. You want it or not." Ellie's mind raced. She wanted to slam the door, call the police, anything to get him away from her house. But something about his casual confidence, the way he stood so still, made her hesitate. She unhooked the chain, keeping one hand on the door, and took the bag quickly, stepping back. "Fine, but don't come back unless I order something." He didn't move, his eyes locked on hers. "One more thing," he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "I need to check something inside. Won't take long." The air seemed to thicken, the fog pressing closer against the windows. Ellie's heart pounded. "No," she said, her voice sharp. "You're not coming in. Leave." For a moment he didn't respond, just stared at her with those shadowed eyes. Then he reached into his jacket pocket, and Ellie tensed, expecting a weapon. Instead, he pulled out a folded piece of paper and slid it through the crack in the door. "Found this with the order," he said. "Thought you should have it." Before she could respond, he turned and walked into the fog, his figure swallowed by the mist in seconds. Ellie slammed the door, locking it with shaking hands. She unfolded the paper, her breath catching as she saw it. The same jagged symbol from the takeout bag, drawn in black ink, with 2 words scrawled beneath it. "You're next." Her knees buckled, and she leaned against the wall, clutching the note. It wasn't just a prank anymore. This was personal. "Miles," she called, her voice shaking, "come here." He appeared from the living room, rocket pieces scattered around him, his face curious but wary. "What's wrong?" She hid the note behind her back, forcing a smile. "Nothing, just stay close, okay?" She grabbed her phone and dialed the salty anchor. her fingers fumbling over the screen. The line rang twice before a tired-sounding voice answered. "Salty Anchor, what can I do for you?" "Hi, this is Ellie Harper. I just got a delivery from you, but I didn't order anything. Can you tell me who placed it?" There was a pause, followed by the sound of papers rustling. "Harper, you said? Hang on." The woman's voice grew puzzled. "I don't have any orders under your name tonight. Or yesterday, for that matter. You sure it was us?" Ellie's blood ran cold. "It was your bag, your logo. The guy said it was paid for." "Nobody's gone out on deliveries in the last hour," the woman said. The woman promised to look into it, but her tone suggested she thought Ellie was overreacting. Ellie hung up, her mind spinning. She glanced at the note again. The words, "You're next," burning into her vision. And then she saw it. A tiny detail in the ink. A faint smudge that looked like a fingerprint. But it wasn't quite right. The ridges were too sharp, too symmetrical, almost like they'd been carved rather than left by skin. "Miles, go to your room," she said, her voice tight. "Lock the door and don't come out until I say." He frowned, sensing her fear. "What's going on? Is it that guy again?" "Just go," she said, more sharply than she meant. He nodded, his face pale, and scurried upstairs. Ellie heard his door click shut, the lock sliding into place. She grabbed a kitchen knife, her hands trembling, and checked every window, every door. The cottage was secure, but it didn't feel safe. The fog outside seemed to pulse, like it was alive, watching her through the glass. She dialed 911, her voice low as she explained the situation to the dispatcher. "There's a man who keeps coming to my house, delivering food I didn't order. He knows things he shouldn't. I think he's dangerous." The dispatcher promised to send an officer, but Greyhaven was small, and the nearest station was 20 minutes away. Ellie hung up, clutching the knife, her eyes darting to the windows. She moved to the living room, intending to turn off the TV and sit in silence until the police arrived. But as she reached for the remote, she froze. The takeout bag was still on the counter, but now it was open, the contents spilling out. She hadn't touched it since she'd brought it in. Her heart thudded as she approached, the knife raised. The burgers and fries were there, but something else was tucked inside. A small folded piece of cloth embroidered with the same symbol. And beneath it, written in Miles's messy handwriting, was a phrase she'd heard him say 100 times. A private joke between them. "Space pirates rule." Ellie's breath stopped. She hadn't shown Miles the bag tonight, and he hadn't been near it. How could his handwriting be here? She spun toward the stairs, her voice breaking as she called, "Miles?" No answer. The cottage was silent, the fog pressing against the windows like a warning. She bolted upstairs, her footsteps echoing, and pounded on Miles's door. "Miles, open the door. Now." The lock clicked, and the door swung open. But the room was empty. His tablet lay on the bed, the screen still glowing with the forum post about the Watcher's mark. Outside, the fog seemed to hum, and from the cliffs, that tapping sound started again. Slow, deliberate, calling her into the dark. Ellie Harper's heart pounded like a drum in her chest, each beat echoing the panic that surged through her as she stood in Miles's empty bedroom. The tablet on his bed glowed faintly, the forum post about the Watcher's mark still open, its cryptic warnings now a cruel taunt. The embroidered cloth with Miles's handwriting, "Space Pirates Rule," lay crumpled in her hand, its weight heavier than it should have been. The tapping from the cliffs outside had stopped, replaced by an oppressive silence that seemed to swallow the cottage whole. Ellie's grip tightened on the kitchen knife, her knuckles white, as she fought the urge to scream her nephew's name into the fog. "Miles!" she called again, her voice cracking as she checked under the bed, in the closet, anywhere he might be hiding. Nothing. The room was untouched, his rocket kit still scattered on the floor, half assembled. She bolted downstairs, checking every corner of the cottage. Behind the couch, in the pantry, even the cramped crawl space under the stairs. No sign of him. The takeout bag still sat on the counter, its contents spilled like an accusation. The symbol, that jagged circle with a slash, stared up at her from the cloth, mocking her. Ellie's phone buzzed, startling her. The dispatcher's voice came through, calm but urgent. "Ms. Harper, an officer is 10 minutes out. Stay where you are and don't engage with anyone. Can you confirm your nephew's location?" "He's gone," Ellie said, her voice trembling. "He was in his room, and now he's not here. I don't know where he went." Her eyes darted to the windows, where the fog pressed against the glass like a living thing, thick and gray and endless. "Stay calm," the dispatcher said. "Check the immediate area, but don't go far. The officer will be there soon." Ellie hung up, her breath shallow. She couldn't wait 10 minutes. Miles was out there somewhere, and every second felt like a step closer to losing him for good. She grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer, its beam cutting through the dim cottage, and slipped on her boots. The note from the delivery man, "You're next," burned in her mind. But so did Nora Tate's warning about the cliffs and the Watcher. She had to find Miles before whatever was out there did. She glanced at the stairs, their shadows stretching long and jagged across the floor. The cottage, once a cozy refuge, now felt like a trap, its walls closing in with every creak of the old wood. The fog outside pressed against the windows, a gray veil that hid whatever might be watching. Ellie's mind raced, replaying the night's events. Miles's disappearance to the cliffs, the embroidered cloth with his handwriting, the photograph from the attic showing a man who looked impossibly like the delivery driver. And now, this whisper, calling her from the darkness above. She wanted to grab Miles and run, but where? The fog swallowed Greyhaven, and the police were still miles away. Steeling herself, Ellie crept toward the stairs, the knife raised. "Stay asleep, kid," she whispered to Miles, her voice barely audible. She climbed slowly, each step creaking under her weight, the sound amplified in the oppressive silence. The air grew colder as she ascended, the scent of salt and damp wood replaced by something mustier, like old paper and decay. At the top, the hallway was dark, the only light a faint glow from under Miles's bedroom door. She hadn't left it on. Ellie's pulse thundered as she approached, the whisper now a faint hum, like a chant she couldn't decipher. She pushed the door open, the hinges groaning, and swept her flashlight across the room. It was empty just as she'd left it, but the air felt heavy, charged with something she couldn't name. On the bed, Miles's tablet glowed, the forum post about the Watcher's mark still open. But now a new comment had appeared, time-stamped minutes ago. "It's in the forest. Follow the mark." The username was Lost Light, the same one who'd posted about their missing sister. Ellie's stomach lurched. She hadn't touched the tablet since finding Miles. How was it updating? She grabbed it, scrolling frantically. The comment included coordinates, a string of numbers pointing to a location deep in Greyhaven's forest. Her hands shook as she typed them into her phone's map app. The pin dropped near the old lighthouse, a place Nora Tate had mentioned, where disappearances had been linked to the Watcher's mark. Ellie's fear battled her need to understand, to find Miles before whatever was out there did. She hurried downstairs, waking Miles gently. "Hey, buddy, we're going for a quick walk," she said, forcing calm into her voice. His eyes fluttered open, confused but trusting. "Where?" he mumbled, rubbing his face. "Just to check something. Stay close." She didn't tell him about the whisper or the coordinates. He'd been through enough, and she wasn't sure she believed it herself. But the thought of staying in the cottage, waiting for that voice to call again, was unbearable. She bundled him into his jacket, grabbed the flashlight and knife, and stepped into the fog. The forest loomed beyond the cliffs, its trees skeletal and twisted, their branches vanishing into the mist. The coordinates led down a narrow path Ellie hadn't noticed before, barely a trail overgrown with brambles. Miles clung to her hand, his sneakers crunching on the gravel. "This is creepy," he whispered, his breath visible in the cold air. "Why are we here?" "I just need to see something," Ellie said, her flashlight beam dancing across the trees. "We'll be quick." But her voice wavered. The forest felt alive, its silence not empty but watchful, as if the trees themselves were listening. She checked her phone, the coordinates guiding them deeper until the trail opened into a clearing. There, half hidden by vines, stood a dilapidated cabin, its wood warped and gray from years of neglect. The Watcher's mark was carved into the door, larger than before, the slashes deep and jagged, like wounds in the wood. Ellie's heart skipped. "Stay here," she told Miles, her voice firm. "Don't move." He nodded, clutching his jacket, his eyes wide as he stared at the cabin. Ellie approached the door, her flashlight illuminating more marks etched into the walls, the windows, even the ground. The air was thick with that sour, earthy smell, stronger now, like something rotting just out of sight. She pushed the door open, its hinges screaming, and stepped inside. The cabin was a single room, cluttered with broken furniture and dust-covered shelves. The mark was everywhere, carved into the floorboards, scrawled on the walls in faded ink. In the center sat a small table, and on it, a leather-bound journal, its cover embossed with the same symbol. Ellie's hands trembled as she opened it, the pages brittle and yellowed. The writing was erratic, a mix of English and strange symbols, describing a ritual tied to the Watcher. "It demands a debt." One entry read, "A life for a life, marked by the circle and slash. It watches from the forest, always hungry." Ellie's breath hitched. The journal mentioned Greyhaven's founders, a pact made to protect the town, but at a cost. Sacrifices to something in the forest, something not human. The last entry, dated 1983's,